Hey, before we get started here today, I just want to mention that my kids are home from for a snow day, which same as last week. So while I'm trying to get this one out on time, and I believe you're watching this on time, the production value is gonna be a little lower. I think there's a point in which I actually completely forget to turn on the rest of my lighting and things like that. It's sort of one of the dangers of having kids in houses and constantly running back and forth. So sorry about the poor production quality, but enjoy the recap. Good morning and happy Wednesday, folks. William Tramp, also known as This F and GM here, ready to talk to you about Encounter Party. We had another episode last night. It's the second part of a, multi-part portion. We'll get into all that here in a second. Before we get into anything, I should probably mention that we have some spoilers here in this recap slash, oh my goodness, what would you call that? I always have a word for it, and I've suddenly forgotten it. Review! That's the word I'm thinking of. Anyway, there's going to be spoilers in this, so if you want to avoid that, you might want to check out one of my other videos. This one right up here, it's the previous episodes, so at least you can get contained. I know, the videos I decide to share with you are kind of all over the place each time I do this, but hey, it's my video. I can do whatever I want, right? Anyway, we have a great episode to talk about, so let's go ahead and get started. Hit it, Tommy! Episode 10 of Encounter Party, Zombieholder. Get it? Zombieholder? Because the episode starts with a fight with an undead beholder, a big eye tyrant, a big orb with a big eye in the center, and then a bunch of tentacles coming out, like stalks coming off with little eyes on it. I say tentacles, they're stalks, eye stalks. A beholder! I made this one. Well, okay, I painted this one. It came from WizKids. WizKids makes a lot of great minis, and I do enjoy them. But we're not here to talk about WizKids. We're here to talk about Encounter Party. We start off with a fight with the zombie beholder. Now, I do want to clarify something. In the last episode, I had mentioned that the zombie beholder, once Flick had pulled the sword out of the beholder's body, that the beholder then tried to bite down on Flick. I was wrong. What actually happened was a spectral maw appeared, just a spectral mouth appeared and tried to bite at Flick. And then the zombie beholder began to rise. So there's a big fight. When the zombie beholder rises from the ground, not only does it rise and start to menace the party, but the corpses in the room of that giant chest cavity of the corpse dungeon also rise and start to attack the party. So everybody is kind of involved in this big giant melee brawl between zombies of the future, zombies of the Longstriders, and the zombie beholder. So all hell breaks loose. We got a big fight that happened here, and I don't want to go into round by round on this one. It's because there's some more important things I'd rather discuss about this episode. But some key highlights are at one point Asher throws a giant firebolt, critical hit I think it was, and did 22 points of fire damage. It was nuts. And then Andrew had one of my favorite lines I've heard from him thus far, which was "cremate that nerd." Tolo, of course, is making judicial use of great weapon mastery and reckless attack, causing massive damage boosts and just hacking through zombies left and right. Dridian got to finally use a smite against the zombie beholder. Didn't take it down, but it did a fair amount of damage because Paladin smite, a-okay. Olavina gets a harsh lesson in damage types and monster resistances when she hurls a poison spray right into the zombie beholder's face, and absolutely nothing happens because many undead are immune to poison. Flick at one point goes down, and Dridian runs over to try to help by giving him a little bit of lay on hands to bring him back up. But we learn that Flick is suffering yet another affliction. Maybe that's why they call him Flick, right? Yet another affliction, because instead of healing him, it does him more damage, which is oh boy. So Olivine has to run over and just patch him up. Now, I would say the most important thing that happened during this entire fight was then having to fight the zombie version of his father. The Lord von Ericsson's body was found inside of the corpse dungeon near the body of the beholder, and as the body reanimated, it attacked then, although whatever, while the body is of Ven's father, there's nothing of Ven's father inside. So Ven has to take charge of the situation and cast down his father with incredible violence, but nonetheless it's a pretty pivotal moment, or important moment for them. Now, during that entire combat, their field leader, Vernon, has decided to do absolutely nothing. Not a thing. Vernon doesn't help in any way, shape, or form. This irritates the group, but nothing is being done about that quite yet. Now, while this fight does take up most of the episode, it is not the important part. After the fight is over, Vernon tells the group that their secret objective was that the body of the beholder was actually the target, not the sword. So, the group starts to gather the body and drag it away. We skip ahead a little bit to the group traveling back home to Boulder's Gate. They have a campfire moment, do one of those group bonding experiences. This time it doesn't go quite as well as the last one did, but that's okay. Again, I still think it's a neat mechanic. And that's when Dridian starts to tell us a bit about his backstory. Some time ago, Dridian's home was attacked by unknown assailants. Dridian was on watch at the time. And these unknown assailants had nothing in common. There's no pattern, no arms or banners that they waved, nothing that really tied them all together that Dridian could see, other than the headband, the field of blue with the closed eye. They lit fire to the forest and pretty much destroyed everything. Now, while the Conclave was being attacked in the Great Forest, Dridian's grandfather walked out with the Black Blade Mirlahain and set to defending against the intruders with this strange and legendary sword. This doesn't go well for Dridian's grandfather. Dridian's grandfather is killed and the blade is taken. Now, something that's interesting to know is that while Dridian's grandfather brought Mirlahain with him to face the uncomers, he never drew the sword, never actually bared the blade against the enemy. It would seem that such a powerful weapon may be a good tool to use in a situation like this, but Dridian's grandfather held back. Well, when the intruders took the sword, though, the blade spoke to them, and then swallowed them whole. Not quite sure what that means. Now, if they swallowed all the intruders whole, then I would assume the swords would still be there. But I think I might have just missed something. That the blade consumed a few of the people, and then they probably figured out to sheath it and then walked off. That I don't know. I'm not entirely certain on that point. But what we're to get out of this is that sword is capable of great power and great evil. Dridian ends the episode by telling the group that he must find this sword before it consumes anyone else. Whoa! Yes! Legendary, crazy, evil swords. This is what Dungeons and Dragons is all about. I'm excited. And also, I'm just excited to... Well, okay, hold on. Before I get ahead of myself, let's go ahead and launch into things that I liked about this episode, things that I didn't like so much about this episode, and then what theories I have about what's to come. Okay, so the first thing, what I liked about this episode, again, we get that awesome terrain piece. So I was super excited to see a big battle forming in a Titanic ribcage. I think that's neat. Another thing I really liked about this episode is that we got to see more descriptions of spells, which I think is very useful. I know, again, I've said this before, I do not believe that it is the Encounter Party show's, job to teach us all how to play Dungeons and Dragons, but I do think it's useful when those little tips pop up. Again, like VH1 behind the music, but hopefully significantly less pop-up. So I don't know where the line is, but VH1, you went too far. Thing I love the most about this episode, Dridian backstory. We have not known anything about Dridian for a long time. We know that he's from out of town. We knew that he's looking for a sword, but this time, we finally got some real information about who Dridian is, what his quest's about, and that's just awesome. He and Andrew and Ned have been holding their characters' backstories really close to the chest during this whole thing, and it is delightful to see that we're finally getting to a point where we're seeing more about them. So that way, I get more invested in them, and it also helps me to understand the story that's unfolding. So wonderful. And I still think that sword is a moonblight. I guess I should put that under theories. Let's talk about what I didn't like so much about this episode. I have one complaint, and that is the corpse dungeon. I think that train piece is amazing. And when I saw it hit the ground, it was pretty clear to me that skull looks like it could hold something. But we really only got 2 encounters out of it. You get an encounter like near the knee, right? And we got an encounter in the chest cavity. and then we're done. And this is a problem that I run into as a terrain crafter often. You build this amazing set piece, right? And you only really get to use it for a very short amount of time. So sometimes you have to wonder, is the juice worth the squeeze? Now, for a television show, that the Corpse Dungeon was absolutely worth it. The visually stunning, the look on the players' faces when they got to see it for the first time, worth it, because I had the same look on my face. But as someone who crafts for his home table and who has a limited space around, I have to wonder, how much did that cost to produce? How long did it take to produce? Was it worth 2 encounters? And that is the one kind of disconnect I have with this show sometimes is, I like to watch actual plays primarily because I like to see how people run their games differently. And when we start getting into these actual plays with a budget, we start running into the issue of the things that they can do are not something I can reasonably do. And that sort of breaks my enjoyment of it. That's not anybody in the show's fault. It just is kind of the nature of what we're doing here. So that was a little disappointing to see, especially since I really wanted to see what was inside that skull. But hey, maybe they go back. I'm going to hold out hope for that one. I also wonder what they did with that dungeon. Like, what do you do after you're done with that? Does that just go to do a prop department in case somebody else wants to use it? No idea. All right. Let's talk about theories or things I'm interested in moving forward. Flick. We need more about Flick. I need to know what's up with this whole Flick thing. He couldn't be healed in the middle of the combat. What's going on with that? Now, I guess it had something to do with that sword in the Spectral Maw, right? The sword that was stuck inside of the Beholder. And my guess is that Flick is maybe instantly attuning to it and instantly getting the curse from it. So the curse maybe doesn't allow for someone to gain magical healing. Now, we'll remember that he could be patched up, so he still has that option. But magical healing, no go. So that's interesting. I want to know more about that. I also just want to know what's going on with Flick in general. Hopefully we'll get some more answers in the next few episodes. Something else was, what am I interested in? Dridian. I want to know more about his sword. This is a different sword, obviously, than what we found in the Corpse Dungeon. So I still maintain that is a Moonblade, like a corrupted Moonblade. Moonblades, again, are these legendary artifact swords that can only be used by elves. But sometimes they can get corrupted. I think there's like one instance of a sword being corrupted. So I think that's what we're dealing with here, and I'm pretty sure that's why his grandfather held it but didn't draw it, because he knew that something bad would happen. On the other hand, if you don't want people to have that sword, well, hopefully you bring out a different weapon. So I don't know what Dridian's grandfather was thinking in that moment. So another point of interest that I'm looking forward to finding out is the Beholder body. Why would the Sizzle Pit operators want a Beholder body? What is that for? I can tell you with experience, there is never a good reason that somebody wants a Beholder's body. It never ends up being something great. It's not like, we want to research how to make puppies and children happy. We need a Beholder body. Nope, it's always bad. So I'm very curious as to how that's going to pan out. Okay. If I have to mention one last thing, and I'm going to mention one last thing, it's the fallout from, Vin having to kill his own father. Again, I'm very curious on how that's going to pan out, what that's going to mean for Vin's character, because that was a hard moment, to have to go through from a character's perspective. So very curious on that. All right, relatively shorter episode today, or recap today. The episode was the same length, but this recap is kind of shorter. Thank you again for joining me to talk about Encounter Party, episode 10. The next episode of Encounter Party is going to air on the Dungeons & Dragons Adventures Network, which airs on Freevee and Plex. The next episode is going to air the 16th of January. So, hey, in a week, I'll be making another one of these videos. So hopefully you join me. This whole thing aside, I just want to remind you that I really appreciate you coming and watching these on my channel. If you wouldn't mind hitting that like button, that really helps a lot. If you wouldn't mind subscribing, that also helps a lot. I also have a Patreon that I really don't like talking about because I kind of hate shilling for money. That's how it feels like. It's like, hey, also give me money. But I have a Patreon, the link's in the thing. Do whatever you want with that. All right, all of that aside, thank you for being here, and I'll catch you next time.